Alright, today we're going to learn how to use Photoshop. Basically, we're going to start off with some of the basics. So if you have Photoshop open, depending on what version you have, you might have a screen like this. And nothing's open in it right now. This is just a little screen that you could click on things and it'll open these types of documents for you. So that's one way you can open documents. Another way is by clicking on File. So you can either open a picture or you can create a new document. So I'm going to go ahead and click on New. Okay, it'll bring up this little text box and you can type in a name. So we can, name of artwork. You can decide what kind of document you want it to be. Usually you'll probably just leave it at photo. You can change around the size of it. You can make it kind of whatever size you want it to be. These are some common standard sizes, or you can change the sizes yourself. So you can say that you want it to be 100 inches by 80 inches. That's pretty big. One thing that you're going to want to pay attention to is resolution. So 300 is a really good resolution to work with because it'll print perfectly. A lot of times pictures will load on as a resolution of 72, and that's okay. They just they won't print as well with bigger jobs. So it's good to leave it at 300. So I'm just going to go ahead and cancel that, and instead I'm going to open just a picture that I have. So I've clicked File and Open, and then you can use this navigation to find your files. If you have a flash drive, then usually it'll show up over here. Me, I'm just looking in my pictures. We'll look in my photography folder. And I need to organize my photos, obviously. I'll go ahead and open this one of my mom's dog. And there it is. We now know how to open a document, which is important. We can create documents and open them now. What I like to do is as soon as I open a document and I know I'm going to be editing it and changing it, is I like to save it as a new document. And why that's important is because it'll keep your original, and then when you make changes and create something new, it won't kind of override and replace your original. So you'll click File at the top, you'll go down to Save As, and if you notice these things on the side, these are shortcuts. So if you press Shift, Control, and S on your keyboard, then it'll save as well. So I'm going to click Save As. And so this is the original name, the IMG 5827. So I usually just add a B next to it, that it's going to be the same image but slightly edited. I'm just going to hit Save. Okay, this little box will come up and this will determine the quality. So you can have a lower quality or you can make it a high quality. Usually you'll probably want medium to high quality file type, and then you just hit OK. With this assignment, I want you guys to become more familiar with this toolbar on the left side of your screen. So I'm going to talk about some of the more important tools that you'll probably end up using. Okay, this tool with the dashes on it, this is a selector tool, and you can make different shapes of selections depending on what you choose. So I'm going to go with the elliptical tool, and with that you'll just click down on your mouse and then drag your mouse and it'll select an area of your picture. One reason why this tool can be really great is because you can use it to edit certain sections of your picture, or you can use it to kind of delete certain sections. So if you wanted to get rid of something, you could select it and then you could get rid of it. Alright, so I just got rid of the dog's face. You can deselect things by going up to select and clicking deselect, and those little dotted lines go away. So let's say that I made a huge mistake and I didn't want to do this. One way that you can fix mistakes is to hit undo. So I just undid the deselect. But that only really works with one step. So that brings me to using different windows. This is really important. You're going to want to click on Window. These are all of the different windows you could have open in Photoshop. If you had all of them open, then you probably wouldn't have room to look at your actual photo. But I like to have the History window open, and then the Layers window, which is already open down here. So with this window, I'm going to drag it down a little bit. It shows you all of the steps that you've done so far. So the first thing that Photoshop did with this was it opened it, and then we used the elliptical tool to select an area, and then we deleted that area, and we ended up moving that selection. So since I don't like what I ended up deleting, I'm just going to go back. I'm going to deselect that, and I'm going to leave it where it is. So that's the selection tool, and that's how you open your History window, which is really, really important. Okay, the lasso tool, that's another way you can kind of select areas, and you select it by drawing. So you could select this funky area. If you don't like what is selected, remember whatever's selected is within this little dotted line. You can click inside there and it goes away. The magic wand tool is really cool because this will select areas as well, but it'll select kind of like a bunch of color ranges, right? So if I wanted to select the white area in the dog's fur, just click there and it selected similar color ranges. If I wanted to select the white bedspread, I could click there and it selects all of that stuff without the shadows. So that's a nice tool as well. You can play around with the tolerance, which is up here. If you wanted it to select more, you can type in a higher number. So I'll just type in 80. We can see what that looks like. So 80, and I'll select the white bedspread again. So that selected it a lot more, and it even selected some of the white fur onto the dog. Okay, and then if I type in 10 and I try to select that bedspread, it only selects a small area. So that is the selection tool. So obviously selecting areas is pretty important, but we'll come back to that later. I'm going to show you how to crop images now. So this little button, if you kind of scan over it with your mouse, you'll see that it's the crop tool. You can use that to change the size of your picture. So if there's areas you don't really like that you want to cut out, then you can crop them out. So I'm going to focus more on the dog's face. And then you can either crop it by right-clicking and hitting crop, or you can just hit enter. And so that kind of cut out areas that I didn't really want. See, if I go back in my histogram, this is what I started out with, and then this is what I ended up with after cropping things out. Okay? Another way you can change up your image is by resizing it. And to do that, you'll go up to Image on the top. You'll click on that. And then you will scroll down to Image Size. Go ahead and click on that. So that's my image right there. The original size is, it's about 62 inches by 41 inches. And the resolution is 72. So let's say I wanted to print that out so that it looked really nice when it was printed. Change the resolution to 300. And let's see what happens. Okay, so it resized and it made it much larger. So I'm going to zoom out. You can do that by clicking on this little tool, right clicking, and then you can tell it. Okay, it got a lot bigger. That's because I changed the resolution. Let's say you didn't want it that big. Okay, let's say you wanted to print it out to be a 5x7 picture. So I typed in 7. It goes to about 4.5, and that's alright. So I'm just going to go ahead and click OK. So it's resizing this one now, and it's quite smaller. So that's how you can resize pictures to end up with the size that you want. So that way it's not ginormously huge. You can resize things so they print out better or to make them smaller. It also helps with Canvas if you resize things to make them a little bit smaller so that way they don't take up too much of the actual screen. So that is how you resize and crop things. Alright, so let's learn how to do some of the more fun stuff with Photoshop. Alright, let's move on to dodge and burn. Those are some really fun things that you can do. So you're going to want to go to this little icon that looks kind of like a lollipop. And if you hover your mouse over it, it'll say that it's the dodge tool. Yep, there it is. So if you click on that, and if you click on it again and hold down, it'll be the dodge tool, the burn tool, or the sponge tool. We're going to hit burn. Okay? So it'll turn into this circle thing. And basically, burning darkens an area. So all I'm doing is clicking down with the mouse, and I'm kind of moving my mouse up and down to kind of color areas on the fur, making it darker. You can see what I've done if I go back in the history. Right, that is the burn tool. And if you right click, you can change the size. You can make it much bigger. Or you can make it smaller. Look how tiny that is. I'm going to make it big. And then you can change, well, I'll make it that big. How about that? Then you can change the hardness. Hardness kind of blurs the edges. So if you want it really hard and really crisp edges when you use your dodge, burn, or eraser, or even painting, then you'll want it at 100%. But if you want it to kind of blur the edges so that you can kind of blur certain areas, you want it at 0. So I'll show you the difference at 100. Right, if you look at this line right here, you can clearly see where I've burned that edge. So if I change the hardness, I go over that, then you can't really see where I have burned anything. So that's how that can be really important. And I don't like how this looks, so I'm going to just get rid of it. Okay, so let's go try the dodge tool. We'll click on that again. The dodge tool is really cool because it lightens up areas, and I use this sometimes when I take pictures of clients if certain areas in their faces tend to be too dark. And so, for example, with this dog, if I wanted to brighten up the eyes a little bit, I would raise the hardness. You can kind of brighten up certain areas that you color over. So let's look at the difference. So that's without dodging. That is with dodging, but you can clearly see over here where I've dodged and where I haven't. So if you're going to use dodging or burning, then make sure that you don't do it sloppily and that your pictures don't look terrible. That's an easy way to put it, right? And remember, the dodge and burn tool are going to be within this area of the toolbar, and it'll either have one of these icons. Now we're going to move on to the clone stamp tool. This tool is crazy, but it's awesome, and it has a funny name, clone stamp. But basically, the name suits it. when you use it, you can clone certain things in your pictures. So to find it, it'll be located over here on your toolbar, and it looks like a stamp. You're going to want to make sure you have the clone stamp tool selected, so I'm just going to click on this. And that's a little bit small. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. And I'm going to use a medium hardness. All right. So how you use this tool is you have to select an area that you want to duplicate. And then whatever you select, you can kind of paint in a different area of your photo. All right, so let's say I wanted to give this dog 2 noses. I'm gonna hover my mouse over the nose. I'm gonna click on the nose, and this is what happens. Could not use the clone stamp because the area to the clone has not been defined. Alt click. So to define the area you want to clone, you have to press Alt on your keyboard, and then you have to click the area you want. Notice how that changed my mouse. So I'm pressing Alt and it changed it to that little gray icon. Okay, that's how you select where you want to clone. So this, now I can move it up and see the nose is going with it. And I can give this dog a second nose on his face. I'm just clicking. And I've now given it 2 noses by using the clone stamp. So if I wanted to continue, I could give it another eye. And then an extra eye. So I'm going to take off the hardness a little bit so it'll blend easier. And I'm going to get rid of some of these edges. Make it look a little bit more real. So that is how you use the clone stamp tool. And it's really fun. You can make some wild and crazy things with it. For example, I just gave my mom's dog, a little makeover with an extra eye. Well, now it has like 6 eyes, so that's pretty wild. If I wanted to, I could even add a nose to the bedspread. So I've clicked on it. I'll bring the hardness up to 100 this time. So I'm pressing Alt and then I'm clicking. And there's the nose on the bedspread, and I could make a second dog over here. Crazy. So that is how you use the clone stamp tool. I use it to make a crazy looking dog, but it's actually really helpful if you want to kind of get rid of certain things in your pictures. Like if there were power lines or garbage cans in your pictures that you wanted to erase out, you can simply go over them with a different area that you want to replace it with. Another way to use this tool is to get rid of blemishes. For example, sometimes I'll photograph clients and somebody's baby maybe hit their head the day before, and so they'll have a little bruise on their head. And so a lot of times the mom will ask me to edit out the bruise. And so I'll use the clone stamp tool and I'll select skin in a certain area, and then I'll go over that bruise and I'll get rid of it. All right, now I'm going to show you how to draw and paint within Photoshop. So you're going to want to click on the little paintbrush icon. You can either select the brush tool or the pencil tool. I'll select the brush one. Then you can go down here, and if you click on the black box, then you can actually use different colors within here. So let's say I wanted to use a blue, and I wanted it to be light. So this is what I'm going to end up with. You can see it changing as I click around. Meh, I don't like those. Maybe I'll use a purple. So I'll use that color. So I'll click OK. Notice that there's purple down here now. And I can go ahead and just start drawing with my mouse. Maybe I'll give Zoe. That's the dog's name. I'll give her a nice bow. It's actually not very nice, is it? So drawing will be similar, and that's how you draw stuff. And then if you wanted to paint things, then you'll go to this tool down here. You can either make gradients or you can use a paint bucket. So I'm going to use a paint bucket, and I'm going to use a different color. I'm going to use orange. And I'm just going to paint away. La-di-da-di-da. Just going to paint certain areas. Oh, I just painted over that bow. Basically, you're just going to select areas that you want to add paint to. It's pretty easy. So that is how you draw and add paint in pictures. One more thing that we're going to learn about is how to add text. So to do that, you're going to click on this T button right here. And once again, if you click on it and hold down on your mouse, then you'll bring up this side menu. And these are different text tools you can use, but I'm going to stick with this horizontal type text tool. And notice how that changed my mouse from a pointer or the paint bucket, which is what I was using earlier, to a little selector text tool. With the text tool, all you have to do is click where you want text to go, and then you'll come up with that. It'll come up with that blinking cursor, and you can type things in there. I am a crazy dog. So that's what I came up with. You can select it. You can change the color of the text by clicking up here. Let's make it blue. You can change the font, which is up here as well. That's taking a little bit to load. Let's see, what's a fun one? Yeah, let's do that one. I'm a crazy dog. You can make it bigger. Whew, that's too big. You can center it. You can change the way it looks. Well, actually, you'll click on that button and you can move it around. There you go. So notice that when let's go back before I made that. After I finished painting, I only had one layer. And then when I made the text, I now have a text layer. So if you guys look at this layer window, there's this little eye, and if I click on it, that layer now becomes invisible. Alright, so that's a little introduction into layers. Now I want you guys to save this as a JPEG file type. That's a really common picture file. And to do that, you have to have only one layer. And so really quickly, I'm going to show you how to flatten your layers. So you're going to click Layer, and you're going to scroll all the way down. You can either merge visible, or you can flatten them. It kind of does the same thing. It turns it all into one. So now you can save it as a JPEG. So remember, you're going to go to File. You can hit Save. That just saved it. Let's say you wanted to save it as a different file type, though. So we've got JPEG. If you click on this down arrow button, you could save it as all these different things. Now JPEG is the best kind of common file format if you want to print it, if you want to send it somewhere. JPEGs work best for submitting things on Canvas as well. But some other printing types are TIFF, and that'll create a really large file for printing. A Photoshop file, let's see, PSD. If you save it as a Photoshop file or a PSD file, then that'll actually save all of your layers and you don't have to flatten them. So that's a really great option to save it as if you're going to continue working with your layers in a different setting or something. And then a PNG, that's good for kind of web formats. But JPEGs are pretty good files to save it as, and so I'd recommend that you save them as a JPEG unless instructed to do something differently. So you can click JPEG and you can hit save. So now we have our picture of our crazy dog, of all the stuff that we've done. So I hope that's a good little introduction to some of the basic tools of Photoshop.